Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive into one of the most frustrating and, honestly, embarrassing plumbing problems a homeowner can face. We're talking about why your yard smells like a literal swamp, and exactly how you can save hundreds of dollars in pump-out fees by fixing the root cause yourself. Look, we've all been there, right? You've got guests coming over for a weekend barbecue, you step out onto the patio, and instead of fresh air, there's this foul, rotten egg stench radiating directly from your aerobic treatment unit. Most people instantly panic, assume the tank is full, and call a professional to pump it out. And that usually costs upwards of $300. But today, we're going to uncover the dirty secrets of diagnosing and repairing this issue right in your own backyard. Let's get into it.
So why does your yard smell like a swamp in the first place? Well, it's not just a nuisance. It's actually a massive biological warning sign. You see, your aerobic septic system is essentially a living, breathing engine buried under your lawn. When it smells, it means your oxygen-loving aerobic bacteria, the good guys doing all the heavy lifting to break down waste, are actively suffocating and dying off. And because nature abhors a vacuum, anaerobic bacteria have completely taken over. These are the microbes that actually thrive in oxygen-deprived environments. As a byproduct of their sluggish digestion, they release hydrogen sulfide gas. That toxic-smelling gas, that is the exact swampy, rotten egg stench you're dealing with right now.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll cover the magic powder myth. Second, the 30-minute jar test. Third, the mechanics, compressors and lifts. And fourth, the household killers and our pro tip reboot.
Let's start with part 1, the magic powder myth and what you're probably doing wrong.
We need to tackle the very first massive mistake homeowners make in a sheer panic when they smell that stench. I know it's incredibly tempting to run to the local hardware store, grab a box of those dry septic bacteria packets, and flush them down the toilet. But listen to me, that is a complete myth for this specific hardware. The reality is that those packets are generally designed for standard, passive holding tanks, not highly active aerobic treatment units. Flushing them into your system actually makes your problem significantly worse. Because the water in your aerobic tank is constantly churning, those powders just cause excess foaming in the aeration chamber. That foam acts like a vehicle that physically pushes out whatever remaining active, healthy sludge you still have left. So you aren't fixing the biological balance at all, you are literally flushing your surviving good bacteria right out of the system.
Moving right along to part 2, the 30-minute jar test, where we diagnose your biomass.
So if we aren't pouring magic powder down the drain, what do we actually do? Well, before we grab any wrenches or start ripping apart air pumps, we need to execute a really basic biological diagnostic test. We need to see if you have any living bacteria left in that tank. We call this the activated sludge jar test, and it's a completely foolproof procedure. Step 1. Open up the lid to your aeration chamber. That's the active, bubbling part of your tank right in the middle, and just scoop a sample of the mixed liquid into a clear glass jar. Step 2. Set that jar down on a perfectly flat surface and let it sit entirely undisturbed for exactly 30 minutes. That is it. It's a purely visual diagnostic that tells you everything you need to know about the health of your biomass.
When that 30-minute timer goes off, you're looking for clear physical separation. In a completely healthy system, the solid, rich chocolate-brown sludge will have settled entirely to the bottom of the jar. That leaves crisp, clear, virtually odorless water resting right on top. But if you look at your jar and it's just full of cloudy, milky gray water that refuses to separate, and it still smells like a swamp even after settling, well, that's your definitive proof. Your aerobic bacteria are dead or actively dying, and you've got a total biological system failure on your hands.
Now, the crucial point here is knowing exactly how to read a healthy jar for when you eventually get your system back online. If your unit is functioning correctly, that solid brown sludge that settles to the bottom shouldn't just be a tiny speck, but it also shouldn't fill the whole glass. It needs to take up exactly 20 to 40% of the total volume of that jar. That 20 to 40% sweet spot tells you that you have the perfect ratio of active biomass to effectively process the waste coming from your house.
All right, let's jump into part 3, mechanics. This is where we diagnose your compressors and lifts.
If your jar test failed, we need to figure out why your bacteria suffocated in the first place. It's time to look at the mechanical engineering of your system, because those aerobic bacteria absolutely require a massive, constant supply of oxygen to survive. The very first piece of hardware you need to check is your air compressor. Think of the air compressor as the literal lungs of your entire septic system. These are usually external pumps sitting near the tank. Brands you'll probably recognize are Hyblo or Seco. Their sole responsibility is delivering a constant, heavy airflow down into the water to keep those aerobic bacteria alive and churning. If a compressor pump fails, your system essentially drowns.
Now, if you walk out to your tank and the pump isn't humming, or maybe it's running but just not producing strong airflow, do not immediately assume you need to drop hundreds of dollars on a brand new unit. Most of the time, the internal rubber diaphragms inside these pumps simply tear from age, heat, and continuous use, or the air nozzles just get clogged with dust and debris. The fantastic news for us as DIYers is that rebuild kits for these specific pumps are incredibly cheap. They take about 15 minutes to install with a standard Phillips head screwdriver. You just swap out the blown rubber diaphragms, plug it back in, and you immediately restore the lungs of your system.
So here is your rapid-fire hardware checklist for a Saturday morning. First, check the pump airflow. Second, inspect for those torn rubber diaphragms we just talked about. And third, you need to check the PVC airlifts. Inside your tank, there are vertical PVC pipes known as airlifts. Their whole engineering job is to move the biological sludge between the different chambers using nothing but air pressure from your compressor. But because they deal with absolutely everything coming from your house, they inevitably get choked up.
And what exactly are they choking on? Mostly it's hair, soap scum, and cooking grease that manage to make it past your initial trash tank filters. When those airlifts get clogged, the circulation stops, the oxygenation stops, and the bacteria quickly die. But again, you don't need a professional sanitation engineer to fix this. The quickest, most effective fix is physically pulling the main drop pipe assembly out of the tank, laying it on your lawn, and blasting those PVC pipes clear with a standard pressure washer. It blows out the grease and hair instantly, opening the arteries of your tank right back up.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, the household killers and our pro-tip reboot for fixing the source of the problem.
Here is the hard truth of rural and suburban plumbing. Fixing the hardware and clearing the pipes won't matter at all if you are actively poisoning your own septic system from inside the house. You have a delicate biological ecosystem in your backyard, and there are 4 main culprits that will absolutely massacre your biomass. Chlorine bleach is literally designed to kill bacteria, and it doesn't discriminate between your kitchen sink and your septic tank. Flushed, expired antibiotics do the exact same thing. Laundry detergents loaded with harsh chemical surfactants strip the biological layers right out of the water. And finally, if you have a water softener, the saltwater backwash from its regeneration cycle will severely disrupt the aerobic environment. You absolutely must switch to septic-safe biodegradable cleaners and route that water softener backwash to a separate dry well if possible. Because if you don't fix these habits inside the house, you'll be fixing the tank outside every single month.
Okay, let's put it all together. You've fixed the air pump diaphragms, you pressure washed the airlifts, and you finally threw away the bleach. But your jar test showed your sludge is totally dead. How do you actually bring the system back to life? Remember earlier we explicitly said do not buy standard dry bacteria packets? Instead, you're going to use an unconventional, pro-tip DIY reboot hack to aggressively feed whatever surviving microorganisms are left hiding in that tank.
For this, you are going to go to your local grocery store. You need a potent carbohydrate boost, like semolina or standard cooking cornmeal, paired with a strong liquid probiotic boost, like kefir or cultured buttermilk. When you mix a complex carbohydrate like semolina with the active live lactobacillus cultures found in kefir or buttermilk, you create an explosive growth environment. This specific mixture is precisely tailored to feed the exact kind of biomass your aerobic system actually needs to thrive.
You simply take that mixture of cornmeal and buttermilk, and you flush it down your toilet daily for the first 3 days after you've completed your hardware fixes. Think of it like a massive, highly targeted fuel injection for your struggling system. It completely skips the foaming issues of the dry commercial packets we talked about, and it goes straight to rapidly multiplying the healthy oxygen-loving bacteria you just saved from suffocating.
So now you know the dirty secrets of diagnosing your sludge, rebuilding your air compressor, and rebooting your biomass with a little buttermilk and cornmeal. Are you ready to save $300 and tackle this over the weekend? Before you call the pump truck and waste your hard-earned cash, ask yourself, have I checked the lungs of my system today? Grab a glass jar, grab a screwdriver, and take back control of your backyard. But it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a little buttermilk and cornmeal can miraculously revive an entire subterranean ecosystem in 24 hours, what other unseen microscopic worlds are we destroying or saving every single time we turn on the tap?